In Cairo, this IVF clinic sees up to 10 female patients a day.
The patients stay here after the procedure. We keep them in these rooms for 2 to 3 hours, and then they can leave.
Here, most women undergoing IVF have no fertility problems. Along with their husbands, they opt for this medically assisted reproduction technique for one reason alone: to choose the sex of their future child.
That's the microscope. And those are the nitrogen tanks where frozen embryos are stored. Today we transferred a sample with lots of embryos to determine their sex. After they'd been examined, the XY embryos, the male ones, were selected for implantation, and the XX embryos, meaning female, were excluded.
In the vast majority of cases, it's male embryos that are sought after. The cost of the procedure is around €2,000, a price that attracts patients and their husbands from all corners of the region.
There are Libyans, Yemenis, Jordanians, Saudis, Emiratis. All nationalities come for medical tourism, and at the same time enjoy the nice weather here in Egypt. They want to choose the sex of the embryo because it isn't possible in their home countries. They obviously choose boys. Very few people come here to choose girls, of course.
In Europe, using IVF to choose a child's sex is banned for ethical reasons. In Egypt, there are no laws to control or limit this now common practice. There are no official statistics on the phenomenon, but business appears to be booming. Clinics operate openly, and they know exactly which gender to highlight to attract customers. Most of them come from rural areas in Upper Egypt. In this village, 200 kilometers from Cairo, we meet Ahmed, a father of 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy.
See that Abdullah? He's playing football.
For Ahmed, not having a son was unthinkable. 5 years ago, he paid for IVF with sex selection for his wife to ensure their next child would be a boy.
The birth of a boy is a joy that's different from the birth of a girl. In fact, we're happier with a boy. Here in the countryside, people prefer having a son to keep the inheritance in the family. People who have daughters, when they marry off, the house becomes like a tomb and the family loses its inheritance. Whereas a boy supports his father and carries on his name. Since the time of the pharaohs, and even during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, men considered the birth of a daughter a disgrace, and that of a son a source of joy.
In rural areas in particular, the social pressure to have a son is so strong it can lead to rejection and discrimination against mothers. In a nearby village, this mother agrees to speak anonymously. At 28, she's just given birth to her 4th daughter. She doesn't want more children and never wanted a boy at any cost. This, at least in the eyes of her in-laws, is an insult and a source of shame.
My in-laws told me, "You already have daughters. You're afraid you will have a 4th girl. Choose the sex." I told them no, Allah will decide. They shouted at me and said, "You have another girl in your belly. You've only given birth to girls. Get out of our house." And they didn't want to register my last daughter's birth. One of my girls got sick and I took her to 3 different doctors who said she needed her tonsils removed, but the family wouldn't pay for the surgery. If she were a boy, they'd been rushing to get her treated, but because she was a girl, they said, "She's useless to us, she'll just get married and leave."
Despite the pressure some mothers face to undergo IVF and bear a son, the issue of sex selection isn't a subject of debate in Egypt. In Cairo, Naveen Abid is the director of an NGO fighting for women's rights. Watching ads from fertility clinics offering sex selection, Naveen Abid is stunned.
The idea of girls being inferior, a second-class gender, still exists in Egypt, especially in rural areas. Of course, we have a problem with this culture that values boys more than girls. So when science is used to serve ignorance, backwardness and discrimination, it should alarm us as human rights groups or as defenders of equality. In the medium and in the long term, if these medical and scientific practices continue to grow, what will be the impact on our society's demographics and development?
Egyptian women's rights groups denounce this growing normalisation of discrimination against women and are calling for the practice to be banned.